All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for the warm introduction, and I'm grateful to be here, although we're very aware that we drew the lucky card and have the last presentation of the very long first day, and so we'll do what we can to have a little fun up here in terms of our presentation, and also tell you a story, and hopefully you'll find it helpful and instructive. As was mentioned, my name's Tracy. I'm the Executive Vice President of Strategic Engagement and Transparency at the Canada Energy Regulator.
And I'm Ryan Hum. I'm the VP of Data and CIO.
Et je suis très contente d'être ici à Ottawa. We are both headquartered in Calgary. Traveled here, didn't bring the snow with us. You're welcome. And also, I've been with the CER around 8 years, and we're going to tell you a story that's at least 8 years old as we talk about our journey in terms of data management and changing culture. So we'll start by just explaining who we are. What is the Canada Energy Regulator? Some of you might know us as the NEB, so the National Energy Board. We changed our name in August of this year. We regulate pipelines, and our job is to ensure that the construction, operation, abandonment of pipelines is done safely. And we are very concerned and think about how to prevent harm and take action when we see and understand causes of harm. We regulate 73,000 kilometers of pipeline across the country. In our 60-year history, we've had over 700 hearings. And so we hold and have data for a lot of years over a large geographical span and covering a good amount of information that Canadians have trusted us with for all of these years. And certainly when we think about data and what we want to be doing with data, we think about how to automate our processes to be more efficient, how to use data to inform our own analytical capacity, and certainly to think about it in terms of engaging with Canadians. So we have quite a data agenda as a regulator, and we've come some distance over the last number of years. So I'll start our story by talking about where we are right now. And certainly what you see is one of our latest visualizations. It's our fourth data visualization that deals with conditions. And conditions, for us, conditions are very important. Some of you might know a little project called the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. When that was approved, it was approved with conditions, so 156 conditions. So for every project, we have conditions, and we think about ways to visualize that data, to understand it, to analyze it, to be able to really work with that data. And you're going to hear more about those data visualizations, both today and certainly leading up to tomorrow. So that's the kind of work we're doing with data right now, but how did we get here? So we're looking back in terms of our own story. And our story on data starts actually over 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, we had one of our senior executives, a colleague of mine, attend a course in Harvard. And we were thinking about, and the course was called The Strategic Management of Regulatory and Enforcement Agencies. So for those of you that find that really exciting, you can sign up and take the course. It is actually a very good course. And as we're thinking about that course, a key theme that was showing up in that thinking around how to be a very, very excellent regulator is the importance of data and analytics and how we would inform our work to be even better, thinking about trends and issues, to spot issues before they arise and take action to prevent harm. So that's certainly part of our story.
So Tracy was talking about the number of hearings that we have. Every single time a project comes to us, it comes following our regulations. And our regulations say that you have to do environmental monitoring, you have to do baseline data. We have tons and tons and tons of data. So we have permafrost data, soil quality, air quality, fish habitat, species at risk, every single point across the pipeline or transmission line. And one of the major projects that we've been working on right now is digitizing that and then giving it back to people. So we've taken over 2,400 of these massive binders of pictures and tables, extracted all the tables and images, 41,000 tables, 130 megabytes of CSV files, 35,000 images, and now you could start searching them. Now you could start collecting them and amalgamating them together so that all caribou tables are all together. And we're hoping to release this very soon. And the reality is, I mean, those are really fun and exciting projects, but the journey to get there is actually not linear. So climbing up a mountain, you actually don't go straight up the mountain. Even though we want to, even though our public policy brain tells us to just go up the mountain, just keep climbing, reality is there's trees, there's like coyotes, there's all these other things that happen. And so weaving through the side of the mountain to get to the top is actually what you need to do. So this is our journey, and we're here to share it with you.
So I talked about where it is we started. So I'm going to bring us back to this 10 years ago, because what you're hearing is the juxtaposition of where we are now from where we started. And I talked about our course, and I talked about our senior executives that were really enamored with the idea of data analytics and the power that it might hold for our institution. And we're thinking about really how best to bring this idea home to be able to deliver the kinds of projects that Ryan's talking about. So 10 years ago, here's where we were. So we did what public service managers do, is we went to a course and we heard that data is important, so we came back and we created a unit, and we appointed staff, and we gave them titles, and we gave them resources, and we said, this is wonderful. If you could just start to deliver data analytics for us, we'd really appreciate it. And it didn't work. So we were wondering why, and really trying to understand what was happening.
And so we had senior management buy-in, check. We had right staff, check. We knew the power of data, check. We even changed their titles to regulatory data analysts, check. All great, but it didn't work. And so what did we do?
We created a new unit. So what we did is reorganized, and then we sent even more of our staff to Harvard. And we thought, well, what we need is more people understanding the power of data analytics. We thought the team just needed more senior leadership sponsorship. We needed probably sort of sexier titles and really be more clear that what we were looking for is analytics. And if we were clearer in our mandate and clearer in our instruction, and we had more champions in the department, this will be fine. And it didn't work.
And so what did we do?
We reorged. So we thought we'd give the team a different boss, and we thought maybe we'd actually try to add some different skills to the team. But we just were doing with more intensity that which we had been doing before. And yet, again, we're coming to the realization that it's just still not working. We're not seeing and harnessing that analytical capability as we thought we needed to.
And don't get me wrong, every single time we reorged, we got a clearer mandate. Every single time we reorged, we better understood what the problem was until we got to this.
Well, what we were seeing is that we weren't getting analytics, but we thought, well, gosh, what we are able to get is some performance reporting. So what we have is a team now that we'd ask them to produce reports based on the data that we actually did have, or the information that we did hold as a department, and tell us about how our programs are performing. So we shifted the focus from not so much on analytics to really thinking about reporting and performance reporting. And we started to learn something there too, and that was that performance reporting was hard, and we weren't even getting the analytics, let alone the reporting against performance. And it really highlighted that we actually had a data quality issue. So we had poor quality data, and it was really showing up in our performance reporting. We'd have lots of excuses or reasons why we weren't able to get accurate performance reporting in our programs, and often it was blamed on insufficient data, poorly structured data, inaccessible data, a lack of data. We had lots of information, but not a lot of data. So now we're left scratching our heads, and our poor data management team is trying to deliver on expectations when we really were starting with an expectation around analytics. So continually telling programs that they had poor quality data.
And don't get me wrong, we learned a lot. Data management, you heard it just now. Data management is key. 80% of any project is data management, data cleaning, data collection. But when you talk to other people about their data, when you actually start criticizing other people's data, people that work with their data every single day, where they try and they understand all the nit grit, they understand the pimples, and they find insights anyways, what they hear when you talk about poor data quality, what they hear about the stinky data issue is this. Your baby is ugly, right? This is what they hear. And then, of course, they don't want to work with you.
So what we had done is taken a very classic public sector approach to thinking about data management and data analytics. And we had done what all of us who have been classically trained as public administration experts had done, which is, identify the issue, think about your organizational capacity, assign resources, be clear on mandate, and continually sort of plan, do, measure, adjust. But the standard approach in terms of really trying to transform a culture when we're thinking about how we work with data, it doesn't work. And we certainly found that over the number of years where we'd been trying.
And so all of us work in an organization that's on a path, that has a mandate, that has a mission, right? That has inertia and momentum. And reality is, to get them off course, right? To try something different, try something new, actually takes monumental effort. And the way that I categorize this is, if you wanted to go up the mountain, the fastest way is to bulldoze and clear out all the trees, right? And of course, we don't want to do that. Of course, there must be a different way.
So certainly for our organization, when we were the National Energy Board just a month ago, in 2014 we had a new CEO that was appointed. So Peter Watson took the helm of our organization, and with him came some different ideas and some a change agenda that I think set us up for success in terms of what it is that we needed to do to transform our data culture. In one regard, he focused on the need for us to be very differently engaging with Canadians. Also creating new partnerships with indigenous communities, critically important for our organization. And thirdly, he really spoke to the need for us to transform how we work with data. And one of the first things that he did was to launch a quite unconventional research project and data project around data visualization, working not just with our own staff and content experts, but certainly driven by external experts, startups, the university, partners that we'd not worked with before, and it made a huge difference in terms of our ability to think differently around data and really trying to get at what we were trying to achieve with our data transformation.
And so why was this successful? We tried the reorgs. We tried a clearer mandate. I think the one thing that we didn't try, which would have been next on the list, is hire management consultants to tell us that our process was wrong. Right? And there are other ways. There are other tools in the toolkit. The easiest one to describe is if this was private sector. If this was private sector, what you would do is you would buy someone, hostile takeover, or merger or acquisition. You want a new capacity, let's just buy it and bring it into the organization. And of course, we're in the public sector, and that's a lot harder to do. So we did the next best thing. We created a partnership with startups, with the university. We created an independent unit that had to work within our system, right? And one of the beautiful things that they did was they focused on the product, not on the process. It's too easy to focus on the memo that you have to write to get that approval, or the IT cab change, the change advisory committee, or whatever it is within your organization to make change happen. And instead, we talked about the product. We didn't talk about how ugly the baby was. We talked about what we wanted the baby to grow up and become. The other way that I describe it is we didn't talk about installing subflooring. We talked about renovating a kitchen. And this makes a fundamental difference to how we think about and how we dream and how we aim towards achieving a goal. And we also brought in experts. So bringing in these partnerships with academia, with startups, brought in the necessary skills that we needed to think differently. Bringing those people to talk to our subject matter experts was fundamental to our change. Right? Creating these interactions between each other, having them talk about how beautiful their data was, what you could do with it, where you could go with it, it changes the conversation. It changes the culture. It changes where you want to go. It changes how people think about what their data is. And you get to clean it at the same time because you're cleaning it for a purpose. So I'm a chemical engineer by training, and I think about catalysts all the time. Catalysts are substances that make a process go faster and easier. And how they do that is they create an intermediate transition state. So you're actually not aiming for the full reaction to go forward. You're actually making it easier to make the first step, the second step, the third step a lot easier. I think that's what happened here. We created a unit that was a little bit independent, that it could go through the system of approvals a little bit easier, brought in the necessary skills, and then we started seeing results. And then more and more people wanted to do this.
And that's really, for us, what part of this data culture transformation really is about, is what does culture change look like? What does it feel like? And certainly, when we think about an organization's change, it's dynamic. It's always moving. But really, what we're starting to see is people feeling differently about data, managing, thinking, working with data differently across our organization, which is really, really important. And critically important for us in terms of the impact of the data visualization initiative for us. It really does cause other units to notice what's happening. Other units started exploring data tools. We had some divisions of our organization that would sort of look over the fence and see the data visualization initiative and think, okay, we could try that. We might even be able to try to use our own tools. And now, for example, folks are using Tableau almost as standard to be able to have different conversations about data. We had some divisions that just were really excited by what was happening in terms of these visualization tools, and now ended up going with the second, third, fourth project as it's moving through the organization. It really was a catalyst for change and for getting units to think differently about what data tools could look like and what they might feel like and how we might apply them in the organization.
And not all of this was beautiful, right? Not all of this was clean and like collaborative. Sometimes we're actually competing against each other. Sometimes the narrative was, we could do this faster and we could do this cheaper. Why are you spending all this money? But the reality is, we got change out of it, and that is amazing. New
data literacy, new readiness. Now we've got absorptive capacity in the organization that we didn't have before, and that change in culture is really, really critical. And it certainly, with the success of those key projects like data visualization, it made things a little easier for us. Having it recognized, having it award-winning, having a platform with which we can speak to Canadians differently about data, and then within our own organization we can see the benefits of using data differently. It really does make the conversation a lot more straightforward.
And so we have this award-winning data visualization products out there for everyone to see. The tangible benefits are, better engagement, easier engagement, more people engaged in the energy dialogue. The intangibles were just as important, though, right? So we had to recruit a whole new team. We created a brand new business unit, right? We learned from our lessons. Let's focus on products. Let's bring in some skills. And so over the course of the past year, I hired about 13 new people. These data visualizations made it a lot easier for me to attract people, right? Data scientists, data engineers, GIS experts, data visualization experts, they all knew that we were serious about doing something with the data because we showed off award-winning products. We had done it already. So they were convinced that they were going to make the change in our organization. But institutional barriers still exist, right? Our team still hears, you can't do this. You are going to break this. You will impact this. Oh, but, that's my favorite one. And so we still get this. And we still have people reluctant to experiment. So convincing a colleague VP to do an innovative approach, it's still really difficult, right? I don't know the solutions. I don't know what we're going to build yet. I don't even know what the problem is sometimes. Those are not words that you want to say to your colleagues at all, but that's the reality, right? We don't know yet until we actually dig in. And so we're working on that. Part of the way that we're getting through all this is signature projects. Signature projects that lift us above the day-to-day and then help us dream, right? So we have a handful of projects. One is on digitizing all the transcripts over the last 60 years, extracting oral traditional evidence from indigenous people, and giving it back to them as an act of reconciliation. That's one of our data projects. Another one is extracting all the environmental baseline data and giving that to citizen scientists, to environmentalists, to companies again, so it makes it easier for them to submit projects, right? None of these had natural homes for where they would go in our organization. But it allowed us to go through breakthrough projects, allowed us to explore and imagine what could be, and then when it's safer, to land those balloons a little bit more. And the context has changed too. Over the past year, all these things have happened, right? Open source, so much easier. New directive, new organization, new cloud. That was amazing, right? Protected B cloud. 3 of the people that we recruited were via Code for Canada, an organization that didn't exist a couple of years ago. Right? So it just made it a little bit easier. New staffing directive, oh my goodness, that is like one of my favorite friends. I know, thank you. So much easier to non-advertise staff a data scientist because they don't exist in the organization. So it allows you to recruit a little bit differently and not run a 10-month, 12-month, 14-month staffing competition externally. These things have changed everything, right? Having organizations and universities to go to directly that have the skills, you didn't have this 5 years ago.
So we're thinking about where we're heading next, and certainly partly what you're seeing today is the real value and benefit, and I'd be remiss in not noticing that one of the catalysts that we recruited was our Vice President of Data and Information Management, someone that doesn't think like a traditional VP, but is doing a brilliant job as a VP in the public sector, asking us to think differently about how we approach data challenges and data projects with a team of people with skill sets that we didn't have 5 years ago in our department. It's making a huge difference. And we're thinking about projects, and we've described them, and there's this what I would describe as a bit of a tension in our organization around data projects now that are incredibly useful and causing us to think differently about how we work, but not yet necessarily seen as fundamentally critical to how it is that we do our work. But I'd argue that the projects that we're working on that help improve our analytical capacity, help us engage differently with Canadians, help us automate and improve our efficiency in terms of how we work, are mandate critical. We just now have to think about how not to have them be seen as simply data projects, but actually fundamental to our mandate. And how do we move this shift from really thinking about how you support a transformation very differently, which you've just heard us talk about for the last 30 minutes, to actually have this become part of how we work, with the risk being that as soon as you pull it back into an organization, that sort of fire might somehow be dampened. But the risk of leaving it outside the organization is that it burns bright, but only specific on projects that aren't necessarily seen as fundamental to the organization. How do we bridge that gap? And you see this happening in real time.
And I don't know how to get there. I don't actually know whether or not we're at that tipping point yet, right? Are we at the top of the mountain where everything becomes a little bit easier? Or are we just at the top of a micro peak ready for the next wave, right? And we have to think about this. I'm really worried about embedding these projects back into the organization and having them go through the rigor of, well, how are we going to use this? What is this going to change for me on the ground when we still actually need to float and dream and go on that balloon journey and then land. And I don't know yet. I don't know how to land. I was telling Tracy earlier that I worry about these things. I'm worried that I'm going to be one of these CEO founders of not-for-profits or whatever who don't know that it's time to actually destroy the thing that you created only for you to scale to the next level. And I'm really, really worried that I won't recognize when to do that.
So that's what we're working through together. And what you see us is at a juncture in our journey. And I will say the journey so far has just been incredible, and I'm so proud of the work that's been done and so proud of the work that we're doing and the talent and the team and the effort that our whole organization is putting into this transformation. And we're not quite sure what the next steps are, and so that's what's actually quite fun about the work, is thinking about how best to move ahead. And initiatives such as this, the opportunity to have conversations with others that are in a similar place, how to learn from each other, both in the public sector and in the private, is just so valuable to us because, again, back to basics, right? Engaging on these issues is how we're going to be able to learn and be better. So, and that's ultimately our goal. So we were mindful of the time, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't leave you or keep you longer than we'd been scheduled to do. But there is, a minute left, and I don't know, Ryan, if you have anything to wrap up, or if there's someone that has a super fast question.
So you've heard everyone talk about data governance, data management. Do not call people's babies ugly, okay? Don't do that. Focus on the product. Focus on kitchen renos and not the subflooring. You'll get to this subflooring. You have to. Recruitment is really, really key. Dreaming is really, really important. But I think that if anyone said that they had the answers on how to do this, I think they'd be lying. What I can tell you is reorgs don't work.
And we might want to just touch base on tomorrow morning. That's our
so
last
we have a meetup at breakfast tomorrow morning to talk a little bit more about our journey. 30 minutes makes us simplify a lot of things and sometimes exaggerate a little bit more. So if you want to know the nit-grit detail, please come see us tomorrow morning. We're also showcasing our data visualizations. They are beautiful, they are interactive, they give us insights about where we could go and how we could regulate better. So we have a ton of our staff here that worked on some of these products, so please feel free to come see us tomorrow and ask questions.
And with that, maybe we'll thank you for your attention, and we'll also thank, I do want to take the opportunity to thank the team that came from Calgary with us here that are great ambassadors for our organization and for the work underway. So I'll just take the time to thank them, as well as the folks who have been working on all of these projects so far.
Yeah,
so.
And probably one key catalyst, Annette Hester.
So. Thank you very much.